Um, okay, let us start our discussion on this meeting. And Dr. Sophia, could you hear my voice?
Yes, do you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, let me start. First of all, let me introduce about our panelists on this discussion. Dr. Sophia Betrò graduated on 2012 as medical doctor and specialized on 2018 as a psychiatric doctor from University of Rome. In 2017, complete the Master of Ethnopsychiatry and Psychology of the Migration at the ETH in Rome. Since 2018, collaborates and is a member of Ecology, Psychiatry and Mental Health section of the WPA, World Psychiatric Association, with an interest the effect of climate change on mental health. And now she is work at the Institute of Psychopathology of Rome. So to Dr. Sophia Betrò, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. If I try to share some slides, I don't know how. Um,
Yeah, just click share screen.
okay.
Um,
Um,
on the middle at
uh,
the bottom with green color.
share screen. Okay,
Okay.
okay, okay. Eccolo. Okay. Uh, did you see it?
Yeah, I can see your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation and welcome to these slides. Today I will talk about mental readiness and resilience in relationship with the climate change effects. As you said, I'm a psychiatric doctor. I'm part of ecology, psychiatry and mental health of World Psychiatric Association, and I have published articles about the impact of climate change on mental health. When we talk about climate, we have to think that climate and climate change are described as hyper objects, a definition introduced by Timothy Morton in this book. Hyper objects are objects difficult for our mind to understand. They are big and complex, and we could experience only some effects, some part of the climate, but not the whole idea. Climate acts like a complex and unpredictable wave. After the Holocene, there is a new introduction, a new definition for the new geological era called Anthropocene, with an emphasis of the human action on this planet. In this era, human action with the greenhouse gases and with territorial changes leads the increase of global temperature beyond the tipping point of 1.5 degrees. During the history of the planet, there have always been temperature fluctuation like this one in the medieval era. But now is the first time that the cause is mankind, the human action on the planet. With Anthropocene, there are many effects, like the increase of atmospheric CO2 and the rise of global mean temperature with melting glaciers, or pervasiveness of plastics, or is also the domino effect in the extinction of the species and loss of biodiversity. In the Anthropocene, the climate change lead some events, and we can distinguish it by in extreme events and long-term events. The extreme events like heat waves, floods, tornado, wildfires, and drought are events always existed, but now with climate change, these events increase in intensity and frequency, especially affecting the poorest area of the planet. Long-term events are progressive, very slow events are less understandable, like global temperature rise, the deforestation, deglaciation, rise of the waters, as we said, disappearance of biodiversity, and that may lead to even a disappearance of society or city. Each of these events has a different impact on mental health, with direct and indirect consequences. The mainly direct consequences of extreme events after the immediate danger of life are the increase of risk of mental illness, like anxiety disorder, sleep disorder, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, or suicide. And we can also describe it like acute effect, subacute effect, and long-term effect. The acute effect occur in populations that are directly exposed to psychiatric illness risk. The subacute effect involve emotion in those who witness the disaster, with anxiety for the future, a sense of passivity, blockage. And the long-term effects are those affecting social and community level, breaking into form of violence, forced migration, and chronic stress. The indirect consequences are the territorial changes that leads to dissociation, loss of identity, personality changes, and solastalgia. Now we focus on some examples of extreme events and their effect on mental health. We start with the rise of temperature and heat waves. We know that high temperature stress directly affects the mind by interrupting homeostasis and thermoregulation. And this could increase hospitalization due to substance abuse, behavioral disturbances, schizophrenia, relapse due to mania in bipolar disorder. And in the heat peaks, the increase of aggressivity, like increased suicide, aggression, and violence. And we know that now each year are becoming hotter and hotter than the previous one. Floods are becoming more frequent and intense, especially in Asia, in regions like Bangladesh. The initial impact is mortality due by drowning or cardiovascular disease, and then came infectious disease and psychological pathologies like depression, anxiety, and PTSD. We have other extreme events like tornadoes, hurricanes, drought, and wildfires, and many studies show a direct correlation with worsening of mental health and the rise of depression, anxiety, and PTSD mostly. All these events, all these diseases can appear even after 1 year from the events and can also its neighborhood population not directly affected. Of course, the gravity, it depends on the geographical location of the disasters, as well as the severity of the events itself. Often, after the first moment in which a person tried to survive after the disaster, people could have difficulty in finding and following the existing drug therapy for mental illness, and this can lead to disease relapses, hospitalization, or suicide. The severity depends as well as from vulnerability and individual adaptation and from family and social support. There are most vulnerable groups like children, elderly, people with chronic ill or disabilities like mental illness, pregnant and postpartum women, people with low socioeconomic status, and indigenous population. To summarize, we have seen that the climate change increase in frequency and intensity of environmental disaster. This lead an onset of depression, anxiety, and PTSD, the most studied. We have few studies on the follow-up years after the disaster, and very few studies on the impact of slow environmental changes on mental health. But we know there is more than that. There are some mental pathology that rise and some that are brand new and yet to be studied. Like this definition that I find about the continuous traumatic stress. It's not the PTSD, it's a stress continuous in the time. People always fear the threat in the real present and the future danger. It's something that is not past. And as we said about the long-term effect, slow changes in the territory lead to not recognize the territory of belonging, with loss of identity, dissociation, like solastalgia. We have anxiety that is an anxiety related to changing on territory with a feeling overwhelmed about the complexity of the problem. Ecoparalysis refers to a sense of apathy, detachment from reality due to inability to respond to climate change and inability to cope with it. Ecological mourning is the mourning associated with ecological losses, the land, ecosystem, and species, and it's related with the lifestyle, the culture, especially in indigenous population. It's important also to consider the risk perception as a tool for build adaptation and resilience. There are many factors that could influence it, like gender, studies, socioeconomic status, or above all, the communication, the mass media, because these allow us to perceive the risk close or far away from us. Risk perception is a subject variable, and each person reacts in different way. It's not possible to detect a universal shared ecological attitude, but rather differentiated coping strategies, characteristics of each group, each identified with its own psychological profile. The perception of environmental risk is an important variable for coping strategies like cognitive anticipation of danger and social learning. Through this behavior, organisms are able to avoid danger and realize adaptation for survival. Obviously, if a person has been prepared, he knows what to do during a disaster, who to refers to, his adaptation will be better and his survival rate too. Resilience is the ability to cope with a dangerous event or disaster, responding or reorganizing itself in order to maintain its essential function, identity, and structure, while maintaining the ability to adapt, learn, and transform. Resilience is essential both for managing events, but above all for preventing or mitigating disaster. It's important to learn to live with change and uncertainty, to cultivate various forms of diversity and various types of knowledge, and creating new opportunities. The psychiatric communities and health and social assistance have to promote and build disabilities in the community in order to allow them to cope with future events. Adaptation can contribute to an increase in the well-being of population, the security of resource and maintenance of ecosystem assets. And adaptation is a continuous learning process, flexible and requires monitoring. In conclusion, while we try to cope and mitigate climate change progression and its consequences, like we have seen the extreme events and long-term events, we must also build a response able to help vulnerable population, allowing them to cope with the consequences of this phenomenon and assisting them towards the future. And I finish with this quote of Charles Darwin: "Is not the strongest of the species that survives, or nor the most intelligent, but it is the one most adaptable to change." I finished.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sophia. I I think that it is a good presentation from you, and
Thank
yeah,
you.
it's a new knowledge for me because every day I'm just talking about the climate change, how what the data could we are analyzed, but this is a good knowledge for me, and to all the participants, if you have any questions to Dr. Sophia, you can raise your hands and open your mic or open your cam. If you didn't want to explore yourself with open cam, you could just close your cam. And if you couldn't speak or open a mic, you can write on the chat. Okay, is there is I think that there is no one to ask. But,
Okay,
I have a
it's a
question.
complicated topic.
Yeah, I have a questions to you. Actually, 18 years I live at the equatorial area that you know the temperature is hot for a long time, and it is increased every year. And I uh, yeah I feel that May until September is the hottest month in my country, and it make me depression and stress if I have a lessons on that month, and how I could adaptation with this disaster. I don't know if you have suggest to doing something, or yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't hear very much well,
Okay.
but
Let
I understand it's real that every year, every month is much hotter. They say like 2018 is hotter than 2019, 2020 is always been hotter. And when there are so long period of time in which one person feel the stress of the rise of temperature, the exhausting, and you feel stress, and you feel nervous, and you feel anxious, and this could lead, and they see the studies that could lead to increase of sleep disorder, for example, behavior disorder, or aggressivity, because our homeostasis is 22 degree for our body. The external temperature is 22 degree. Above this temperature, our body feel the exhaustion. So it's very difficult to adapt to these changes. But now every year is becoming more hotter, so this becoming difficult to cope with.
thank you for your answer. Is there anyone to
Yes, thank you.
okay,
I
go ahead.
I would
Yeah.
have I had a question to
Oh,
Sophia.
sorry.
First of all, thank you for your very interesting contribution. This is my question. It seems to me that the risk of not giving a correct answer to the stresses of climate change is particularly high in a democratic society where decisions are made by the majority of the population, and the majority is subjected to, and if the majority is subjected to stresses that lead them to deny the problem, a correct decision cannot be taken.
Mm-hmm.
How is your point of view in order to avoid this kind of, I would say, light form of stress, but very dangerous politically?
Mm-hmm. This is true because the population more wealth deny this problem, and the poorest population are subjected to the climate change and the majority of the effect. Unfortunately, I think that this is the right choice. I mean, do information through speaking about it, through about every point of view of this problem. So the psychiatric point of view, the economic point of view, the social point of view about the climate change. Only with this, with a holistic view of the problem, we could teach the other person to understand what's going on and try to avoid the denied that we have.
Okay, it's also the main problem that the activists in ecological problem have to face when they speak with people, and they feel sometimes themselves as they were boring with the people with them they talk. Because the people try to deny or to not to pay attention because the problem seems to be too big to be solved. But the activists should find means in order to speak better with these people. You, as a psychologist, what kind of solution or may to use to avoid this difficulty?
I think that the problem that you stress can be avoided about being tuned with the public. When I speak, I have to know who is my public, who I have to talk about. So I can be in tune, I can see the problem, and I try to make it understandable. So it's important for the activists when they talk, when they speak, know what is the public, what is a person, the people, where they came from, what is the political, maybe the political attitude, and they try to be in tune with it. So with some person you talk about the social effect, the economic effect, and maybe with some other person you could talk about the real effect, maybe in the lens that the person could see if they are farmer, for example. So be in tune with the people that you have in front of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone have a questions again or more? Just maybe one questions. Okay, let me ask again. I'm interested.
Tell me.
I'm interested about the stress and anxious and depressions about the age. If you know that maybe who will be impactful in this change, like age under 18 or 18 until 35 or above. I don't know. I hope that you could get what I'm talking about.
I guess there are people more vulnerable, like the babies, the infant, or the elderly. So the old people, because they could have more pathologies, medical pathologies, or medical difficulties, or mental health pathologies. So the very young and the elderly people are the most affected to the disaster, for example, for extreme events.
Okay,
So like the woman, and this depends also by the country and for the socioeconomical status, or even for the degree, the elementary or university degree, the studies of the person.
okay. I think that's a good answer for me.
And
Thank you so much, Dr. Sophia Betrò, for your presentation and your answer on this discussion. And thank you so much for participants that
please, hello.
yeah.
I have another question. To pose another question.
Okay, feel free to ask.
I often feel uncertain when I speak with adults if I should use a soothing tone or scaring people or risking to scare these people, explaining very clear the gravity of the problems. What is, from your point of view, the best approach?
This is true, because if you speak about this problem, you feel that is very complex and could be overwhelming and feel powerlessness. So you say, okay, but now what can I do? You could offer the option, because every people could do something, and even knowledge is a tool for be more prepared of what's coming next. So not only the information, but also the give people tools for understand and for adapt better to the future.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I think that
Okay.
have questions
There is
in
a question, a typing
chat.
question.
Okay, Maria sent the chat of the questions. The impact of climate change kept increase even in this pandemic era, which there is social distancing protocol or outside activity reduction. And the question is how we can anticipate any mental health when we stay at home, and what if the cause of mental health was from family, but we have to stay at home. Do you have any opinion about it?
Okay, now with the pandemic, it's very difficult to maybe do a path with a psychologist. I think that even when we stay at home, we are in smart working, there are some tools. So you can connect with psychiatrists that do a visit like with the phone, like we do now with WhatsApp or Skype or other tools. So there are always a tool that give you the permission, that give you the way to connect with another people and receive help.
Okay, thank you. Maybe the last question from Domenico. I sometimes heard about eco-anxiety as the anxiety due to climate change, how to cope with, also the willing to do everything altogether.
I speak about anxiety in my presentation. It's the anxiety to feel overwhelmed, and we feel it now, I think. How to cope it is to build, as we said before, to build adaptation, to build the resilience. So yes, I know that there is this problem, but I can do something. Even little things like, okay, I join an activist group, or maybe I read more books and be more informed and do little steps. Maybe I be more green, the behavior green, like we said. And this is something that make you unconscious of what you do and what happen.
Okay, okay, thank you so much for your answer. And Maria said thank you for your answer too.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
to all the participants and our speaker, I think that's all our discussion on today. And thank you so much for interesting. And before we end the meeting, we will continue our discussion on this link.
Okay.
And Dr. Sophia, you can join too. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
And I will end the meeting and see you again. See you later.
Thank you to you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sophia.
Thank you.